What is up, gamers? It is Will777JP, and we are back. Yes, we are back, and we are going to be talking about Switch 2 games sales. So, we got some numbers out here, and they're very, very, very interesting. And I decided, you know what, let me make a video, share it with the community, and get their opinion, see what they think. Now, I know a lot of us are physical game owners, right? We look to buy physical first. But with that being said, when you guys are watching this video, I want you to put that physical game owner, physical game collector, physical game purchaser a little bit to the side. Not completely, but a little bit, because I really want to get an objective opinion on what you guys think. So please bombard that comment section. Let me know what you think. Let me know what your opinion is, and let's start a discussion around this, because I have a couple ideas and we're gonna go get into all of that. But first, let me just say thank you so very much for being here. If you've been subscribed to the channel, I appreciate you so very much. If you're new, please hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, that notification bell, so you stay up to date whenever I post videos. Getting back into it. So I have an article here pulled up by the Game Business. An article written by Christopher Dring. And the title is, "It was the biggest console launch of all time, but was Nintendo Switch 2 a success for third party?" Now we're going to go ahead and read this real quick, and then we're going to show you a couple other different things, and then we'll go ahead and get into the discussion part of this video. So, let's start here. It says there, "Hello there, welcome back." Oh, actually I want to skip all this. Was Switch 2 a success for third-party publisher? So it says here, one of the big conversations around Nintendo Switch 2 is whether the machine would deliver for third parties. And, never mind, let me continue. Major companies including EA, Take-Two, Microsoft, Ubisoft, Sega, Capcom, Bandai Namco, Square Enix, CD Projekt, and Konami have committed support for the platform and is in our travels. They're talked about how Nintendo is actively trying to push third-party games this time around. The launch of the Switch 2 was huge with 3.5 million consoles sold in just a few days, making it the fastest selling game machine in history. We know that Mario Kart World was clearly number one game, but what about those third-party releases? Games such as Cyberpunk 2077, Bravely Default, Hitman, Street Fighter, Hogwarts Legacy, Civilization 7, Split Fiction, Sonic, Yakuza, and so on. Let's find out. Before we continue, people who say that the Switch is not a competitor to the PlayStation, to me, are completely wrong. Completely wrong. One, every single third-party game that I named here, except for maybe Bravely Default, because I don't know, are also available on PlayStation, and most of them are also available on Xbox. Two, Nintendo has, with their actions, actively promoted that they are really going with third party, and we've seen some of the exclusives that they have with third party, such as that Souls game right here, The Dusk Bloods, right? It's a game from FromSoft, published by Nintendo. We have no date when it's coming out, but it's going to be 2026. It's exclusive for the Nintendo Switch. It's a multiplayer PvPvE role action playing game to be released, right? So, I mean, this is very third party exclusive, right? So people who are saying that the Switch 2 doesn't compete, what are you talking about? Look at the specs with the Switch. Up to 4K, 60 frames per second. You can play these third-party big hitters. You can play third-party on the Switch 2, and it looks good. It performs well. Well, that is to be seen, but what they want to do with it, right? So I just think those people are completely wrong when it comes down to that it's not a competitor. Just because you can take it with you doesn't mean that it is not a competitor. But anyways, oh, and also the pricing is right in line with the PS5. Let's continue here. The launch of the Switch 2 was a huge hit, which I already read that. All right, here are the numbers. 62% of Switch 2 physical game sales in the US launch week were from first-party games, excluding the Mario Kart World Bundle Circana. 48, meaning this information came from Circana. The next one, 48% of Switch 2 physical game sales in the UK launch week were from first-party games, excluding the Mario Kart World Bundle. So that means that almost half of the Switch games sold were first-party, excluding Mario Kart. So not even including Mario Kart. So the Zeldas, all that stuff. This is by Nielsen IQ. 86% of Switch 2 physical game sales in the UK launch week were from first-party games, including the Mario Kart World Bundle. So when you include Mario Kart, you're looking at a 8.5 out of 10 times it's a Switch first-party game. That's insane. Nielsen IQ. Next one. By comparison, for the launch of the Switch 1, 89% of UK physical game sales were from first-party. Now that one, I don't really count that one too much because when the Switch 1 came out, there weren't much from third party at all during the first year. I think the first couple years of the Switch. I could be wrong, but I remember when the Switch 1 came out, there really wasn't much for third party. Next one. And for the launch month of Switch 1 in the US, 81% of US physical game sales were from first party games. Circana. Next one, CD Projekt Red Cyberpunk 2077 was the best-selling third-party game during the launch of Switch 2, beating launch sales of CD Projekt's The Witcher 3 on Switch 1. And we're going to come back to this one because this one is extremely important. Sega was the number 3 biggest publisher on Switch 2 at launch. When it comes to games released both physically and digitally, over 80% of Switch 2 game sales from physical retailers, data shared by publishers. There you go. Let's see what Chris thinks these numbers means. Although third-party publishers appear to have done slightly better during the launch of the Switch 2 compared to the Switch 1, it's hard to describe these statistics as positive. Most third-party Switch 2 games posted very low numbers. One third-party publisher characterizes the numbers as below our lowest estimates, despite strong hardware sales. The improvement over Switch 1 launch is also slightly misleading. For starters, there were more consoles sold this time. Plus, the Switch 1 only launched with 5 physical games. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 1 and 2 Switch, Just Dance 2017, Skylander, Imaginators, and Super Bomberman. By comparison, the Switch 2 had a wider selection with 13 physical games available at launch. As usual, there are a number of things to consider with these early figures. Around 80% of all Switch 2 console sales were of Mario Kart World Bundle, and we would expect some of the remaining 20% also picked up Mario Kart World. People buy Nintendo consoles for Nintendo games, and it would be expected that new users, particularly those who are buying a Nintendo console on day one, would begin with Nintendo software as a result. It's possible third-party game sales will occur later, once players have had their fill of Mario Kart. Which is soon. I've been playing Mario Kart for a week and I'm already tired of it. Meanwhile, Nintendo did not send out Switch 2 units to media ahead of release. That meant there were no reviews for any of these third-party titles at launch. For consumers who may have wanted to pick up a second game alongside Mario Kart, there were no critical reviews available for them to base their purchasing decisions on. One of the drawbacks for third-party publishers is the fact that the Switch 2 is backwards compatible with some older games, including popular titles like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Alright, okay, that's all I'm going to give about Chris. But he says something very important here, too, before I move on, is that the Switch didn't provide any review console. So therefore, people couldn't test these games out on the Switch 2 and write the reviews, make their YouTube videos, etc. Nintendo, it's so selfish, right? So extremely selfish. I mean, we know this, just how they release their games, how they price their games, their remakes and remasters and all that, right? But they also are hurting their partners, right? Especially coming from the Switch 1 and how weak that console was and how terrible a lot of these games performed. Nintendo should have released review consoles, if not for themselves, which it would end up being for themselves anyways, but for their third-party partners and help promote that, right? But either way, let me take you guys on over to what I wanted to share you guys. So here are a couple tweets, which is the interesting part. This is where I want the discussion to go real quick. So this is from Physic Release on X. He says, No Nintendo Switch 2 game key card in the top 10 of the Japanese sales chart, remembering that almost all games were released as game key cards there. So, look at this list right here. Right? Mario Kart World, Rune Factory, Guardians of Uno Marvelous, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Mario Kart. Okay, so you got Switch 1, Switch 2 games. Here's the other one I want to read. The Game Business quotes, when it comes to games released both physically and digitally, over 80% of Nintendo Switch 2 game sales came from physical retailers, data shared by publishers. Very interesting. And then here's the other one I want to share with you guys. This is where the conversation I want to hear from you. The Game Business, quote, most third-party Nintendo Switch 2 games posted very low numbers. One third-party publisher characterizes the numbers as below our lowest estimates despite strong hardware sales. Cyberpunk 2077 was the best-selling third-party game. Now, let me ask you a question real quick, because when I saw that, let me zoom in here. Cyberpunk 2077 is one of like 2 or 3 Switch 2 games that don't have a key card. Meaning, you can play the game straight off the cartridge. Straight off the cartridge. And for going back to Chris's article, where he said that because of reviews, there was no early reviews for the console, that it really hurt third party, which it did, of course. But he's saying that's probably the reason why. Then why did Cyberpunk outsell everybody by a big margin? Especially when Cyberpunk is probably the oldest game from here that's been released on the Switch 2. Cyberpunk came out in 2020. We're talking about 5 years ago. I believe it's the oldest game. I'm just looking here real quickly. It's the oldest game. Meaning that it's also the game that's been sold the longest, which is also a game that's been sold the most. And what is the one difference between Cyberpunk 2077 to all these other games is that the game is on the actual cartridge. So, one of two things, and this is where I want to ask you guys. One, do you think this is going to wake Nintendo up? Do you think this is going to wake up these third-party publishers that, hey, we need to include the game on the actual cartridge itself? Look at what Cyberpunk did, and they're doing it well. Not just that, Cyberpunk made a statement right around the Switch 2 release, or before that, how they wanted to ensure their game was on the cartridge, and they opted to pay for the more expensive cartridge, a 64 gig one, so their game would fit on there. And they said, yeah, it's a little bit of a hit for us financially, but it's worth it for our fans. And that got so much goodwill, right? Now, this is the question that I asked when I retweeted this. I said, let's reprint these games, but with an actual cartridge, and let's compare the sales. Are people not buying them because they want a game like Cyberpunk on the actual cartridge? That's my reason for not buying any of them. What's yours? Now, I don't own Cyberpunk 2077 for the Switch yet, but it is the game that I want to buy the most. One, Cyberpunk 2077 is one of my favorite games ever, but two, I really want to see how Cyberpunk 2077 looks on the Switch 2, and that's my reason of wanting to buy that game so I can test it and share it with you guys. But what do you guys think, man? Let me know what you guys think. The Switch being a very successful launch, 3.5 million sold in the first week. Mario Kart selling through the roof. Well, all Nintendo first party for the Switch 2 basically selling very, very well. Third party isn't. Now, there's another argument that people don't buy the Switch 2 for third party. That's also, I think, partly true. But once again, people like me who own multiple consoles, especially at the $450 sale price that Nintendo is selling their console at, I think are rare. They're not as common. When I look at all my friends and family, and even some people on the channel here and on social media and people that I've met, a lot of them only have one console. And if they do, it's a Switch. If they own more than one, it's a Switch. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens next. And the other thing, too, is maybe Nintendo will use this as an excuse Or third-party publishers will use this as an excuse to be like, you know what, our games didn't sell well anyway, so we might as well just go all digital, right? Instead of saying, you know what, let's put them on a cartridge because Cyberpunk did so well. And I think that's what's probably going to end up happening because the video game industry as a whole is going that way. And I don't mean the digital part, I mean the blaming the consumer. They love to blame us for when things don't go well instead of blaming themselves. Instead of holding themselves accountable and saying, you know what, we did this stupid game key card bullshit instead of coming out with an actual, cartridge that holds our game. No. Hey, the gamers, they obviously don't want to go by physical anymore. Physical is dead. That's not the case, bro. Look at Cyberpunk. Very, very well. It's the game that's the oldest on the console, a third party that I can think of right now. It's one of the games that sold the most. I don't know. You guys let me know, right? What do you guys think is going to happen with this? Do you think they're going to come to their senses and be like, you know what, let's put our games on the cartridge and forget the key card? Or do you think they'll just blame us and continue on and then eventually get rid of physical completely? And that's the question I want to leave with you guys today. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for all your support. You guys are amazing. And then we'll catch you in the next one. Keep it gaming.